your buddies too.
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm looking at it right now. According to schedule, John Gooden is first. It goes Gooden, Sanko, DC, Olivi, Hardy. Good, they put Hardy first.
The last two scrums have gone half an hour.
Pulls an anchor one. That's like super high quality.
Like, damn, I you buy this one.
This is the only reason I bought this one is because it was so cheap.
Yeah.
HDMI, 4K stream, capability, USB-C, bunch of data ports, Ethernet port, SD and micro SD reader.
One thing it won't do is it's not strong enough to charge your phone.
Oh, really? That's why I have this one.
Yeah, that's the only thing I don't talk about.
Hello.
I don't know why they got me in front of you guys. God, you're an intimidating lot, aren't you?
Not in the least.
Yes. Well, no, we're on a break. There's no one in there. I'm not sure now.
John, appreciate it.
That's all right. My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Good. Cool. Obviously, want to talk about this week's card, but before we talk about this week's card, we got to go back, right? You're on the mic for the one of the greatest knockouts we've ever seen, the biggest viral moment in UFC history. So a couple days later, let us know, like, what was that experience like? Was that the greatest moment, I guess, of maybe your career?
Yeah, I think it might have been. I was there with Conor on his rise, though. So when Conor won like that second world title at Cage Warriors, it felt like something big was about to happen. And now we have time, and I can look back on that. Oh yeah, something big really did happen, and we've just seen like the biggest combat sports star emerge from that point. So, and I was close to that situation. Cage Warriors, much smaller promotion. Be on the road together, like I would have had a lot of interactions with Conor. So it's slightly different. But as a broadcaster in general, but for the UFC, I feel like I've been there with some good moments. You know, there's been some good cards. There's also been some tough nights, and just on a personal performance level. And then the last fight, Island, was really tough. We as a team, the UFC live production team, had to really come together. We had, like, now that the documentary's out, John Anik had this positive test, and I was having to get ready to call the pay-per-view, and that brought about a lot of emotions and a lot of workload. And then I had my own duties to be doing. So there was just so much going on last time on Fight Island that I didn't get to take much of this in. And so coming around to this, bit more space, and then I'm not sure anyone knew that we were going to get a whole night like that. And that moment was bonkers. Just talking about it with DC, I felt like I was calling a fight for a boxer. You know, Buckley was set up like a boxer, and I was thinking of ways to try and put that across, and then that kick comes. So there's nothing that, I mean, it's not like it can be scripted, but in my mind, the train of thought was not down that route at all. So everything that you saw was completely organic, you know, from a broadcast perspective. You know, I guess that's my perspective that you're asking for. So, yeah, I said some silly things, and, you know, it's...
How much have you watched it back, and are you satisfied with your call?
Well, no, I'm never satisfied with any of my calls, and there are a couple of things which weren't great. And I think that there's been a couple of memes where when you say something like, that's real life ninja, there's in the truck, they're probably like, oh, no. And I think there's an internal filter that stops me from saying any naughty words. So, yeah, we got through that one. And yeah, listen, I think I'm going to make a T-shirt, and I'm going to sell that. I'm going to try and get I'm going to speak to Buckley's manager and see what charity would like a share of those things over to, because I'd never do anything like that. Someone thought it might be an idea, and yeah, I think that'd be quite a cool gesture. So.
That'd be really cool. So put the real life ninja stuff on?
Yeah. And then sell that, and whatever charity he wants to, we'll put a share to one of those.
That'd be cool. You mentioned the documentary in UFC 251. That was all kind of relevant, you know, for us to see that. We hadn't seen it before that aired. So what was that week like for you, that you're cramming for potentially one of the biggest fights of the year on days' notice? Yeah,
that was tough. You know, I've been with the UFC. This is my 7th year now. So I've been calling fights for over 10 years, but it's different. It's different. And it's not just that. There was the emotion of, like, a teammate was hurting, like Anik's in a few doors down. I'm speaking to him, and he's not in a good place mentally, you know, because he doesn't know what the situation is. So, yeah, and as a team, even like with our coordinating producer, he was with him, and there was just so many unknowns, and I could sense it from the team. And we just had to pull together, you know. I was there to help John. John was there to help me. Whoever goes. Like, the show goes on. But from my perspective, you know, John Anik is our pay-per-view guy. I was only ever going to warm that seat, and I know that I'll only ever get that opportunity if something unfortunate happens to John, and I don't really want it on those terms, if I'm honest. But you know, we have to do what we have to do as a team, and yeah, I was ready to go, but I take 2 weeks to prepare for a fight card, let alone a pay-per-view.
Right.
I was doing it in 2 days. I didn't sleep for a couple of days, I don't think. Just trying to get it all done. It was uncomfortable, but I proved to myself the amount of work that I could turn around in a short space of time.
But no disappointment that then you crammed it all and didn't get
No, not at all. No, because that means that John wouldn't have been a part of, like, one of the biggest cards, and that was his gig. So, yeah, no, not at all.
this week, Ortega versus Almeida. Obviously, everybody's really looking forward to it. From your point of view, what's the most intriguing part about it? Whether it be storyline, technical matchup, what's the most intriguing part of this fight to you?
Well, I think they all blend into one, really, as a storyteller, which is what I consider myself to be. The whole thing about the delays in which has come before us, the kind of sideshows that have been around that, and then this massive change from Ortega. I'm fascinated to see how he wants to be a completely different version of a guy who was the best, one of the best guys in the division, but it's all change. Like, what does that mean? What are you going to look like? And Zombie's been working more closely with Eddie Char, and I think these guys could be quite different in the way that they come into this, which is, as a fan, fascinating. I mean, I love watching both of them, but could it be better? Great.
Nice. Last thing for me, I want to ask you about Mateus Gamrot. He seems to be all the rage. I mean, I know he's new to the UFC, but I know that you're familiar with the European scene as well. So can you tell us much about him? He seems to be all the rage behind the scene. All the Polish fighters saying, watch out for this guy. He's a superstar. So what have you seen from him?
What you got to understand is in Poland, they have millions of people watching mixed martial arts on the TV. It's huge over there. And he was a star. He was a 2-weight champion at KSW. He's more of a wrestler, ground and pound submission guy, but he's got skills everywhere. Norman Park, for those that can remember him in the UFC, he had a big rivalry with him as well. And he's got the wins over him, but he wanted something more. He's been out to ATT. He's measured himself on those mats to know that he's ready for the big time. I think he really wanted to come in and crack that top 15 first fight. That's not what he's got, but at the same time, he's got to queue up like everyone else, get it done, prove it. Guram, who he's fighting, is no joke, man. That kid's got serious talent. He's on the mats with Hamzat Chimaev every day. And the wrestling thing isn't his deal. He's a striker, flamboyant striker. That's a fun matchup. But Gamrot, we look at Polish MMA right now, Jan Błachowicz, can't say congrats enough. He was telling me when I went out to film with Błachowicz about Gamrot coming over and how he's excited. And the UFC, even to the people in Poland, is the highest level. So he's coming in with a lot of pressure, but I think he can be a big star.
This is now the third media day we've done with talent. Third or fourth, I lose track. None of them have brought notes.
I didn't. This is not notes. Sorry, this is the fight card. Yeah. It's just the fight card because I've gone back to back.
Sure.
I've prepared for this card before I almost prepared for the one that we did on the weekend. So now my mind's I'm so smoked from last weekend with all the emotions of the event itself. And so, yeah, I've just brought this just to remind myself.
Why'd you prepare for one before the one that you're about to call?
Because I know that it's not the next thing coming up. So I always want to lead up to whatever I've got with the freshest memory. I haven't got a steel trap memory like some of these other guys. I have to be the guy that revises hard. It's just how it is for me. So, yeah, I get it done. And then I can just fill it all out. And plus, you guys are putting stuff out closer to fight week as well. So it's no point me spending time on the ones that are far away.
And then you talked about calling the Buckley KO. Have you listened back to any of the other highlights you've called and been like, why did I say that? Any of them that's
I think the fans remind you sometimes about some of your calls. I don't really tend to labor on a lot of the stuff in the past. If there are things that the team want me to address, and if I'm honest, it's not a lot you can really do with fight calls. Again, I have a style. I've been doing this a long time. That's not going to change overnight, but how I work with the producers and my ways of getting in and out and just telling the story better is what I'm more focused on as in terms of doing my homework and post-mortem.
And then you obviously call a lot of fights with fellow fighters. Is it harder to call if Dan comes back to fight, would it be challenging to call his fight?
I mean, it would be challenging, but I'm a pro. I grew up in a small scene where I'm commentating on my coaches, another one of my coaches, the guys who I train with. I was going out researching at gyms for guys that I was calling fights for my teammates and going and training at gyms against their opponents so I could try and get a better indication of how I could bring that to commentary. So I've always had to balance that, remove myself. Modestus, who's fighting this weekend, he's from my town. And Jimmy Crute started talking some strategy. I put my hand in the air and said, I will never let any of this go into his camp, but just so you know, we're from the same team. And I'm going to be talking about the guy that is in his corner was cornering me in one of my amateur fights, or both my amateur fights. So just so you know, but I'll never let that. Like, this job and the sport's far too important to me for that.
What do you think of Paris had their first big major event? I know it wasn't UFC, but...
Yeah, long time coming. You know, a long time coming. It's from what I understand, it's been like a judo thing. So judo have a strong hold over a lot of that stuff, and people was, you know how it is, people stopping the run of mixed martial arts. And I think that's still a problem. North America, the perception is very different to what it is in the UK. They still don't know, and Europe, they still don't know what our sport is, the true nature of it, and everything in between. So it's great to see us jump these hurdles. You know, you guys had it with the New York State. You know, we're now starting to tick off places, and we've got fantastic French fighters. Cyril Gane, who's going to be fighting, is one of the top prospects in the heavyweight division right now. So when everything gets back to a more fluid schedule internationally, then, you know, we might be able to see someone like Cyril Gane headline a card in Paris. Like, how good would that be?
What's under the radar, Jim, that people aren't paying attention to this week on this card? A fight that maybe, you know, is kind of flying under the radar that you think would be good.
Fight would be good. What do I think is really good? I love seeing Thomas Almeida come back as well. And like, that kid's been he's still so young. He's been getting different looks in Vegas and going up against like Jonathan Martinez, who's an enigma. Man, he was hilarious when we heard him earlier. It's like crowbarring information out of him, but he was talking about backyard brawls. He showed us videos that looked like Jorge Masvidal's type stuff. I swear to God. I'm like, dude, like, we barely had a few words out of you. You bring out this video, you show us these fights. It's like unreal. He was taking on people that have been in like juvenile detention centers, and he's calling a fixer so that he can fight these guys in a backyard situation. It's absolutely bonkers. And you see that guy, it completely goes against what his personality type is. But yeah, and also I'm really excited about seeing Mark Striegel against Said Nurmagomedov, combat sambo for Mark Striegel as well as Nurmagomedov. He has been over to Vegas as well, but I think the Philippines have had quite different representation in the UFC to this point. He's a completely different style to what we've seen in the past. American Filipino as well, so you know he's going to be able to sell himself to all different audiences. But I'm excited to see. I like the lighter weights as well, so yeah, that's going to be a good fight.
Obviously, Tom Aspinall had another great finish as well at the weekend.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on his future in the UFC?
One thing I really like about Tom, and I think a lot of the analysts are talking about this as well, he is willing to go step by step by step, when in reality, he could be calling out for people high above him in any kind of rankings. And I think the matchmakers will be going, yeah, okay, I could get on board with that. But Tom's already looking at getting that fight with Sergey Spivak that he missed out on. Or was it Carlos Felipe? He was like, I could fight him. He wouldn't put a glove on me. Let me fight him. Because he wants to earn his reps. He was a guy that wasn't getting a lot of looks on the local scene. He just couldn't find fights. And I know that his coach wanted another 12 months before he came to the UFC. But you got to keep these guys being fed. So he was always UFC ready. I think Team Cowborn wanted him to like smash the top 15 when he came here. But they like got the reins on him, and he seems like he's okay with that. So good luck to him. He's got a long career. He's a young guy. Very exciting. You're good? Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
when someone told me I had a media scrum at 6, I was like, all right, who am I interviewing? What are we doing? What are we doing, guys? And they're like, no, you.
The other side of it. That's awesome. Well, what do you think? I mean, obviously there's a second Fight Island run and people are getting used to it now. What's the biggest challenge you think for the fighters as they come here, traveling, most of them obviously fighting in the middle of the night? What is the biggest challenge?
Sleep, 100% sleep. I think that was maybe overlooked a little bit last time in terms of when people were analyzing certain performances. The sleep is a real factor. I've got 2 people that I'm close with out here, Jonathan Martinez and James Krause, so I'm kind of very aware of how they're dealing with those things, and it's not easy. Like, it's a daily conversation of, now, are you sure I should be trying to go to bed here? And like, but what about this? And, you're never awake when the sun is up if you're trying to stay on U.S. time, trying to work out when you think you might be fighting. It's a tricky thing. And then for me, I'm kind of doing the same thing, although obviously not fighting. I have to be somewhat on and, able to form a sentence at some point.
I get it. No, yeah. I completely agree with you. Do you think that'll change it all for the pay-per-view next week, which is more like a traditional time? Do you think it'll be easier for those fighters?
I do, yeah. I think the closer that you can be to, it is really hard to fight nature when you're here. Like, my room is so bright I don't even know what time it was, but I was trying to go to sleep and my room was just bright, and I'm like piling shirts on top of my face and stuff. So I think, yeah, the closer you are to actually fighting at a time that would be normal to this location, the easier it's going to be on fighters for sure. No doubt. Yeah.
This week we've got obviously Ortega and Zombie. Everybody's looking forward to this main event. From your point of view, what's the most intriguing aspect of it? Because there's like a lot of like storyline built into it, but it's also just like technically a great matchup as well. So what's the most exciting part for you?
It's an amazing matchup, and I think for me the biggest thing with these 2 guys is the X factors. I love a fight where we already know what we're going to get from these guys to a degree, just because of the styles that we have come to know them by over the years. Zombie coming forward, Ortega with just that ridiculous jiu-jitsu, so much power in his hands. But they both have been inactive to varying degrees, and especially Brian Ortega. I mean, when a guy's out that long, you have no idea what tool set he's been able to create in the meantime. Now, I know he's been dealing with injuries and stuff, but he comes from a great camp. I actually sat next to his striking coach on the way over here, so had a lot of time to chat. And I think we're going to see an even improved Brian Ortega on the feet. And Zombie, obviously, we know he has a danger factor anywhere this fight goes. I do think in terms of just stylistic matchup, he's dangerous everywhere. But I think he's going to try to keep it on the feet. And I just can't wait to see it. Like, I like Brian Ortega on so many levels, and I'm excited to see him back. I'm kind of a jiu-jitsu nerd, so I like that type of fight. And there are so few fighters that when they jump guard, I'm like, yes, this is getting exciting. He just jumped, who does that, right? Like in MMA, we tend to, someone does that, we're like, oh, what a pussy, Not when Brian Ortega does it. He's about to do something crazy cool. So I'm pumped for that fight.
I want to ask you about women's matchup, Jessica Andrade, Caitlin Chukagian. It's like a key one. I feel like it's flying under the radar. People aren't talking about it much. What do you think lies in that matchup? Because it seems like a big one.
Well, I think obviously Chukagian, she's got such amazing length on Andrade, and she's going to really, really need to use those lead weapons to keep the distance here, keep the wrestling away. But again, hits the canvas. She's got some pretty slick jiu-jitsu moves as well. I think Andrade, has learned a lot from the setbacks that she's had in recent years. And if we see her come out and move a little bit more fluidly, cut more angles, work on that footwork, I think that this is going to it's another very, very intriguing matchup. And again, like you said, not one that people are talking about maybe as much as they should be.
Yeah. No. Last one for me. Any other names, like whether it be a matchup or somebody's story or something that stands out to you that maybe people should be looking out for on this card?
Well, I got to give a shout out to my boy, James Krause. He's obviously been one of my best friends for like 13 years. And to me, he's a guy who flies under a lot of radar because he doesn't fight super frequently, but that's only because he's coaching 13 UFC fighters. I think he's just now starting to get his due as a coach. Maybe not quite yet from everybody, but people are starting to pay attention to the coaching. And I hope I'm not saying anything I'm not supposed to, but really the only reason he took this fight when he did is because he looked at his schedule the rest of the year, and he never wants to take away from the fighters at our gym and the fighters that he coaches. So he's like, man, my November's packed. Got Megan, in December. if I don't fight now, I'm not going to fight. So like, hey, Jason, I need to fight like now. And so for him to be able to step up on last minute notice, and I expect really, really good things from him in this fight.
You talked about how excited you are when like Brian Ortega pulls guard.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, Korean Zombies hit a lot of like 10th Planet style stuff. So
Yeah.
do you view this as a stylistic matchup in terms of jiu-jitsu?
Oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that as much, but yes. Yeah, I think it will be a really intriguing battle because, just outside of this fight in the jiu-jitsu culture, that's kind of like a dividing line, right? Like, are you traditional Gracie BJJ or are you that 10th Planet? Sometimes 10th Planet kind of gets, I don't want to say maybe looked down upon by the diehard traditional jiu-jitsu players, but it's clearly effective. Casey Halstead's daughter rolled through Kansas City. I think she's like 19 or 20. She's been doing it since she was, out of the womb basically. And she's a smaller, I think she would fight at 105 if she fought. And so I rolled with her, and man, I forget how different that 10th Planet stuff can be, and like just the way that they move, where they put their legs, especially that high guard, and just it's really unusual stuff. Obviously, I'm sure Brian has seen all of that, but yeah, you bring up a really good point. That's going to be fun to watch, kind of the battle of styles.
When we see these like two grapplers face each other, it usually kind of turns into a striking battle.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, is that what you're expecting too? And who do you think holds the advantage if it doesn't go that way?
I think if you had to, if we were doing one of those breakdowns where you're just asking me purely who has a striking advantage, I'm gonna say Korean Zombie does, but I do think Brian Ortega has, just a ton of power. He's shown that, right? Like, I think that Zombie has a style that's really, really difficult for people to deal with, and he can do some really unusual things in there. And not many people, if you haven't faced someone who just continues to come forward consistently, it can be really, really frustrating to figure out, like, why are my punches not affecting him in any way, shape, or form? And it can be kind of, a mind F, for lack of a better term. I probably should find a more eloquent way to put that. But I give Zombie the edge a little bit in striking, but that's not to say that Brian Ortega should be slept on. And again, he's been gone so long. We don't really know what he's bringing to the table in the striking department in this fight, because it's a long time to be away sharpening your tools.
When you mentioned the 105-pound division, you think UFC needs to hop on that?
I do. I do. I'm probably going to get all sorts of flack for saying this, but, I think the UFC has proven that women's MMA is a very good business to be in. I think that the featherweight division is exciting in its own right because you get big punchers and you get big finishes, and you have Amanda Nunes. Who doesn't want to see Amanda Nunes fight no matter what weight class it is? But I will say that if you're looking to tap into markets like China, like the rest of Asia, there are a lot of atomweight women over there, a lot. And there are a lot in the United States as well. I think that there's a handful of girls that fight at strawweight in the UFC that are much better suited to be atomweights. I know Loma Lookboonmee has put on some muscle and obviously doing good things at strawweight, but she's a natural atomweight. Jessica Pena used to be atomweight. Michelle Watterson used to be atomweight. I don't know if Michelle Watterson can make atomweight anymore because she's stacked. But and there's a whole crew of really talented women coming up through Invicta, and I love Invicta, right? Like, that's my home. That's where I got my start. But part of the reason why I didn't continue with my fighting career is because that would have been the pinnacle, and that was not enough for me, financially, and just in terms of, like, if I'm going to dedicate my life to something after having a child, it's got to be like a big thing. I want to be able to justify spending 6 hours a day away from my kid. And for me personally, potentially being the atomweight champion of Invicta was just not enough reason for me to do that. So yeah, like, I have a real personal burning desire to see the atomweights. There are more of them than people realize. I actually think it's a much easier division to keep filled up than featherweight is. There's just more. I think they're really exciting fighters. And I need to go back and look at the stats, but last time I looked, there are a surprising number of finishers. You're not going to see a ton of one-punch knockouts, but Loma Lookboonmee is an excellent example. I want to see that girl fight every time she fights. I remember watching her in Invicta flying teep kick this chick across the octagon, and like the girl literally like flew in the air and I want to say her back like hit the side, and I whipped out my phone, and Shannon's going to kill me, but I whipped out my phone and was like, Mick, you need to be watching this fight right now. This is why you need atomweights in the UFC, because it is exciting. It's like the flyweights of women. They're fast and they're fun to watch. So I could keep talking about that for too long, sorry.
Hello.
Hey.
What's the most significant thing you took away from the fighter meetings?
Fighter meetings? I was not part of the fighter meetings. I was not. I wish I could give you some insight there. When I come here for quick hits, I'm kind of under a different like column in the UFC. So I'm not technically with the broadcast team. I'm on the social team. So I was not a part of those, but I would have given you an amazing insight had I been.
Good.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Sorry was your shot. And then I saw my couple of
I thought it was here in my notes.
Anybody down next to this car?
No, we still they're gonna change on Thursday. I think so. They said they're gonna do that.
Oh, so we still got
Yeah, they changed I think it was just like not direct disrespect. So that's what I asked. Yeah, that they're probably like, but not direct. Really?
Yeah. So there was a warning. Yeah.
It's not gonna open.
Right, yeah, because last time just asked. Unfortunately.
We gotta get the next one too.
The next week needs to get changed. That's the spirit. We are getting to next week, right?
Jump? Yeah, next week. But yeah, ready. This is what we're getting forever.
It's like, you're a pussy, huh, China? And what fight is on? Is that what it is?
We'll have to come back.
it's just for that. He's eating nachos. Yeah, I thought he was before me, but he's eating nachos. Hi, everyone. This is new. Sorry if I'm bad at it.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
This main event, everybody's been looking forward to this one for a long time. So I just want to ask from your point of view, like, what's the most interesting aspect of it to you? Because there's part like the storyline that it's all built up to, but then there's part like just the style of the fight itself. So what's the most exciting thing for you?
Right. I mean, for me in my role, obviously it's more of the storyline. I think you can't deny that we all know this is a fight that we've been looking forward to. Their two styles or something that, we love that kind of clash inside the octagon. But for me, the storyline is so interesting. And being at that fight in Las Vegas, when it all kind of went down and the drama just was heightened, I think it adds something. I don't think that they needed any drama to sell this fight. But I think because it's there is certainly another level of interest. You have to wonder how that's going to affect people. I mean, Korean Zombie even made some comments about, handling his emotions, and I was saying negative things, and that wasn't really me. So you can tell, it is affecting them in one way or another. So you kind of wait and see like, oh, how do they look when they get into the octagon? What's their walkout like? Do they seem like emotions getting to them? So I think it just kind of adds another layer to a fight that we are already so excited about.
Yeah. Well, we found out in the last couple of days, obviously, that Henry Gracie's not going to be here for Ortega. Now,
yeah.
We get to talk to all these fighters, behind the scenes. I think they tell us what they want us to hear sometimes. They know. What do you think when you talk to them? How much do you think that's going to affect Brian? And will they be more honest with you than they are? Because I know you watch our coverage too. Will they be more honest with you behind the scenes than they will with us?
Yeah, I think there's a level of trust with us, and we have these fighter meetings where, they're closed door. Nothing that is said in those meetings will ever be repeated until time for the broadcast. And there's often times where they'll tell us things that they still don't want repeated at all. I think it's important they have that kind of trust with us. We're around the world with them. We're all here, and so I flew, and Brian Ortega's crew was right next to me, and then he came out, and I will tell you, they were so relaxed. They were having fun. They were playing games for hours. They were really enjoying themselves. And Brian seemed to be enjoying the process, which is always something that we talk about with our athletes. And, it seems like that always benefits, our different fighters to be able to find some joy in this experience. And so with Henry being there, of course, I'm sure it's going to be a voice that he's missing, but I have no doubt that there's going to be a FaceTime or something, minutes before the walkout, or maybe even some sort of live FaceTime where he's just watching the warm up. I think when you have someone that valuable to you, you don't just say okay, well, you couldn't come, so now you're not included at all. I'm sure there'll still be some incorporation of however that works. Actually, we have our official meeting with Brian after this, so we'll get a little more info on it then.
Obviously, everybody's tuned in the main event, but are there any other, whether it be fights, because of a matchup or maybe because of an interview you've done or a story that is there anything else that, people maybe should be looking forward to that maybe they're not?
Yeah, well, I'm excited that we signed Gamrot. I think that's really great. I was just watching his fights last night. I love the Chookagian-Andrade fight. I don't think it's getting enough love. And I think it's so interesting. Jessica Andrade, former champion, her third weight class in the UFC. It's actually, I don't think that we realize it, but it's been done by a couple of women before to have, kind of that triple threat, 3 different weight classes in the UFC. But she's always so fun to watch. And Caitlin Chookagian, she had the title shot, obviously. Then she beat Valentina's sister, Antonina. But you can tell she wants to be right there. And this is a big fight for women's 125. It really is. I'm super looking forward to that. And then also Jonathan Martinez and Thomas Almeida. I just think they're such great guys. Jonathan Martinez is so quiet. And Thomas Almeida is a pretty soft-spoken guy as well. But when they get in there, they're just killers. And with Thomas's long layoff, I'm really curious to see how he returns, almost 3 years. And I was fortunate enough to see him work out at the PI quite often when he was training in Las Vegas. So that's one that I really piqued my interest. And I think that's a great way to start off the main card.
Nice. Last one for me outside of this. The documentary came out. And obviously you and Joseph were a huge part of, kind of the last couple episodes. I guess what was that like? Watching it, and I guess having so much of your personal life kind of be out there as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Really?
Yeah.
On purpose?
Yes.
Interesting.
the worst day of our lives. So like, what is there to relive, you know? And I was there for it. So, you know, I haven't seen it. Everyone's been super nice about it. And I have to say, Rory, the producer and director of it, absolutely incredible. Him and his entire crew were wonderful to work with. They were so sensitive and like, they understood the situation and had such great respect. And they were so wonderful even after. But, you know, I mean, I don't mind sharing my personal life at all because
I thought you wish you hadn't done it, maybe, or.
I mean, sure, like because of how it ended, but it's also like, you know, like that's a risk and that's a part of our life. But like to be able to show other people like this is how we love each other, but also there's going to be highs and lows in life, and there could be moments that are worse than that. You know, we're healthy, we have good families, we're able to make a living for each other. Like, yeah, he lost a fight and his dream obviously was shattered right there, but we got to go home to our beautiful house with our health and, you know, see our families and stuff. So we have to kind of take it all in stride. And I think that Joseph is a beautiful example to a lot of people. And I'm so proud of him for that. So as much as I don't want to watch it, I know that it provided something good for other people to see.
I was going to say, it's clearly hard for you to talk about, but I mean, do you see the value in it? Like maybe helping, you know, fans or, you know, newcomers to the sport realize like what goes on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, especially with the internet, oftentimes people forget that, you know, these are human beings with feelings. For me in my role, I always like take Joseph into consideration. So whoever's in front of me, I want to treat them the way I want Joe to be treated. And I want to tell their stories the way I want Joe's story to be told, because yeah, he's a beast inside the octagon, but he's an artist and he loves fashion and like, he's a great person and he's been sober for 15 years. Like those are stories that matter, you know? And so I always take the approach of storytelling the human side of these athletes, because yeah, we're all here to see them fight inside an octagon, but there's so much more to each individual that it's important, and it doesn't always go our way. And, you know, there are times, I'm sure every person in this room has had somebody where they're like, oh, you're just gutted, right? Because you know they're a good person or you know their background. And I think it's important to remember that for people. I think, you know, in MMA especially, but in all sports, oftentimes that's forgotten.
You mentioned storylines and what have you, but if you look at Brian Ortega and Korean Zombie, they're probably two of the more laid-back fighters.
Yeah.
By the way, and yet they probably have more heat since the Izzy Costa fight. Are you surprised that it's those two that are bringing the storyline?
You know, probably, yeah, especially with Korean Zombie. He speaks English, but not like a ton of English. So it's not like they're, you know, kind of, they can jab at each other all the time or anything like that. Yeah, it is a little bit surprising, but you know, they're two incredible competitors. And I think that ultimately is really what is leading to this, is they both want to get, you know, to that title, and for Brian get another shot at whoever's holding the belt. And so I think it really comes down to that, but it is surprising, especially like when you see them outside of fighting, they're just chill, you know, they're not really doing anything. They're very soft spoken. So yeah, it is a little surprising.
You think that just shows every fighter can be pushed to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I even think, you know, they're a great example, and for like the diehards of the sport, you take somebody like Hannah Cyphers, right, who hates doing media, and she knows she has to get better at it, but she's terrified when she does it, but then she goes in the octagon, and that's where she wants to be, and that's what she wants to do, and she turns it on. So I think, yeah, it's absolutely also an example to people like, you don't know who you're talking to on the street, so it's best not to mess with anybody. Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Was it good, the documentary?
It's really good. It's really good. And I've actually said this a couple times, like, when you were next to the cage, like, I purposely didn't take a picture of that.
Hey, thanks.
But I was, in the documentary, I was like, oh, because it was all starting to unfold, I was like, oh, fuck, they're going to show it. And they didn't. They showed you going in, and then they do show, like, him, but that, where I was even like, that's too much, like, stop, you know what I mean? They did.
They said it was a collective stuff.
It was footage.
me 6:45.
Who did?
That's my schedule, Zach. Zach told my schedule at 6:45. I did not know it was at 6:15.
No worries. Megan jumped in and filled the spot. So it was good.
What's up, guys? Good. You guys enjoying Fight Island?
Yeah, ready to go home, but yes.
I know, right? How long you been here?
Since the beginning, yeah.
Ooh, shoot.
I'm liking it, but I'm ready to see the wife and kids.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody's been looking forward to this main event out of the fight night. And obviously, the pay-per-view is huge. But when you look at this fight between Ortega and Zombie, where do you think it gets won? Like, what's the most key area that somebody has to dictate to win this fight?
Honestly, when I look at the matchup between the two, right, Zombie has like a complete skill set, and so does Brian Ortega. But where Brian Ortega struggled with Max Holloway was when he was forced to stand for an extended period of time. And I think that's the same type of situation he's going to find himself in with the Zombie. He's got to get this fight to the ground. And if not for keeping him there extended periods of time, he has to be able to mix it up to make the Korean Zombie not feel so comfortable on the feet, because that dude's a handful too. So ultimately, it's I know Brian Ortega knocked out Frankie Edgar, and sometimes you fall in love with the hands, but for him, he needs to get this fight to the floor, because if the Zombie can stay standing, he's very difficult.
Yeah. We just found out the last couple of days, obviously, that Henner can't make it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from a fighter's point of view, like, how much difference can that make? I mean, I kind of like what Henner said, where he's like, dude, jiu-jitsu, you got it.
That was the most. I was on the plane with Brian Ortega over, and we were talking, and he was talking about his training camp and how well it went, and how Henner had his positive test weeks ago, right? But he's been kind of alternating positive and negative. And when you get to Vegas, if you're positive, you can't travel. It is what it is. But if there was one coach, and this is a mindset of Brian Ortega, right? If there's one coach that he had to go without, why? If it's the jiu-jitsu guy, he feels pretty confident. Because as we know, Brian Ortega is as talented a grappler as we have in the entire UFC. So tough for a team, but it's like me not having a wrestling coach going into a fight. Right. So it's best of the worst case scenario.
Does it change though? Like, because I get the feeling they're kind of like a mentor relationship too, right? I mean, does that change anything?
Well, I mean, I just think that at this point, right, when you fought for a world championship, you know how to go fight, right? And what's normal? What's normal today, right? So to think that Brian Ortega is going into this fight and things don't feel normal, well, he's fighting in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island. There's a place called Fight Island that Brian Ortega is fighting the Korean Zombie, right? So what's normal in 2020? So this is kind of par for the course for all the fighters that are fighting on these cards. If something gets dealt your way, whatever. It's the way the world works today.
No doubt. Outside the main event, man, any names, matchups, anything that stand out to you as you're studying, like good stories or styles you want to watch?
We just did fighter meetings for the last 5 hours, and I have to go and decipher through these notes because I take a ton of them, right? Because I don't want to seem like an idiot on the broadcast, but there's some high-level talent on this fight card. I'm excited about the heavyweight matchup on the main card. I'm excited about the light heavyweight matchup. I feel like, and I'm going to butcher these names if I can even remember them. What's the kid's name at the light heavyweight matchup? The kid that knocked the guy out with the elbows last fight. Very different name. He's from England. He fights out of England. Huh? No.
No, he was from the other card.
Is it Dricus or no?
No, M. His name starts with an M, and he's fighting the big kid, the big strong kid that lost to Modestus versus Jimmy Crute,
yeah.
Right? That's the one. And can you believe that? I can't remember all the names. Like, come on, man. It's like Modestus and Jimmy Crute, right? I think this is going to be a good fight because, for me, it's about the stories. Like, I love the stories going into fights. I love the storylines, right? And if we go back a year and a half, Jimmy Crute was this guy. The same exact situation. Jimmy Crute going into the fight with Serkinov, right, as the guy, undefeated. He was the new prospect in the division. He ended up getting beat, got back on the win in his last fight. Now you look at Modestus, he comes into the UFC, has an impressive performance, win $50,000 with that nice finish. And now he's the guy. And Jimmy Crute finds himself in that situation that Misha was. Now, does he take advantage of it as Misha did before? So I'm excited about that fight. There's just some good fights all up and down the card, you know. And as I continue to prep, because I don't even know what today is. Is it Tuesday, Wednesday? Like, I mean, I don't even know what day it is, but I know that come Friday, we'll be we'll know who these guys are, because as you learn about them over the course of the week, you know how talented they are.
You talk about stories in the light heavyweight division, the new champion. What do you make of him? Does he deserve?
Man, this is so crazy. Like, it's so crazy, man. Because like, if I say something, then he's gonna attack me. Like, it's like I'm like an easy target here lately. All of a sudden, like I decide to retire, and everybody takes shots at me. You know, I said something. I praised Jan Blachowicz for his title-winning victory. I thought he looked fantastic. But I also speak the truth, right? And I sometimes see things, and I speak on those things, and he didn't quite like them. So then he tells me to go fight him. I'm 41 years old, man. I just got out of the game. You try to pull me back in? I think he's a good fighter. I think he's very talented. And honestly, what he's done is inspiring. It should inspire a whole different crop of fighters and let them know that the top is not out of reach. We've seen Jan Blachowicz lose. We've seen him lose at light heavyweight. We've seen him lose at middleweight. And he continued to believe in himself and his team, and now he's the UFC light heavyweight champion. And I don't think there's no asterisk or asterisk. What asterisk? Is it asterisk?
I can't
asterisk. I don't think there's asterisk. It's asterisk, right? You said asterisk. That's what messed me up. Like, there is no asterisk. Like, I think that John Jones left the division, right? And this guy won the title, and he deserves all the respect in the world. And I'm interested to see what happens, and I'm excited to see what happens with this division, because for a decade, Jones and I were the only two people that ever touched that belt. Let's see if this thing starts switching hands like a hot potato, or if somebody can hold on to it.
So last thing for me, I mean, we have to ask about Jones. This Jones Adesanya stuff, it's on different levels than even you guys were, right? I mean, what are you making out of this whole thing?
Well, because Adesanya is one of those new internet kids, right? These internet kids don't even need to verify if something's true. They use it. There's a rumor, they use it, which is actually quite astounding, because there was a rumor that Jones hid under that cage for years. Adesanya somehow got him to admit to doing it. He actually got him to admit to doing it. So, I mean, there's obviously a method to his madness. And I thought when it started and he kept going after Jones, I was like, man, I can only imagine how many plates or like coffee mugs Jones broke in his house that night because he's so mad. But then when he got him to admit that, it was nuts. But Jones has had some good comebacks too. You know, it's been good. And if you're Israel Adesanya, you just don't fight him, because you know how mad he is, right? Could you imagine making this man as mad as he is making him and just not fighting him? Because it doesn't seem like Izzy's ready to fight him right now, but I think this is the matchup. I think it'll be a fantastic fight, too.
Well, that's what's interesting, right? It's like it doesn't even seem like they're ready to fight, so why are they going?
Jones wants to fight him. Like, Jones wants to fight him. Like, everybody talks about Jones, but Jones is a fighter, man. He'll fight you. He'll fight anybody. And he wants to fight Adesanya. But Izzy won't even fight him, like, which is the most it's like just like picking on somebody constantly, but at a distance. Like, I'm away from you. And I'm not saying that Adesanya's scared, but Adesanya says, I need my time. You said you were going to heavyweight 10 years ago. You're finally doing it now. You know, why can't I have time? It's very fascinating the way that these two interact with you. It's nasty, but these rivalries tend to get nasty. I mean, Jones and it was not nice, and they tend to get nasty, but that makes it fun for fans.
You think they will fight at some point?
I hope they fight at some point. I think it's a very interesting matchup, and I think that Adesanya is just improving every time out. So if I'm Jones, I'm fighting him sooner than later if I can get him in there. Because remember, this guy's only been here for a couple of years, and now he looks like he's going to hold the belt forever. I mean, what he did to Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa's still delusional. I mean, I like Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa's like, sign the contract. What contract? There's no contract, Paulo. It's not coming. Like, after what happened a couple weeks ago, there's no contract coming. Like, just go fight somebody and just take it. Like, but then I'm like, Izzy, leave him alone, man. You keep picking on Paulo Costa. He's dead. Paulo Costa's dead. Leave the dude alone. You're putting pictures on the internet of the guy. Kick him when he's down. It's a different world these guys are operating in today, man. Usually, you win and you kind of move on. But, man, for days, I started feeling bad for Paulo Costa. And then when he started responding, it actually got worse. Like, come on, man. Just take your licks. Just take your licks and just don't even say anything.
If John Jones had admitted to you he'd hidden under a cage to avoid the
drug tests, would you have asked the commission to investigate that? Because he technically just admitted to avoiding a drug test.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you know, if you find out that he was doing something wrong, you're not surprised, right? So it's like, what are you going to do? Go down this same path? So I don't think you, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Would the move for a Jones-Adesanya fight be to have Israel fight Yan for the world title first and then make that a 205-pound world title?
See, now I never thought about that. That's interesting. Having Izzy go up. See, because here's the dilemma with the fight. What weight are they going to fight at, right? Because now that Jones is putting on weight, does Jones want to come all the way back down to 205? That's championship weight. That's not easy for him. It was never easy for any of us. Making 205, is awful. It was awful. And it's awful. It's hard for Jones, too. He's a big guy. So for Adesanya to come up and just think that dude's going to deplete himself all the way back down to the championship weight, that's probably not what he would want to do. But if Adesanya can get past Blachowicz and now he's holding that title, now it might be a little bit more intriguing to Jones to go back down there. I don't know the weight. I really don't care, though. Like, I think Adesanya's a big guy. They can fight 215, give Jones a few pounds. I remember when I fought Anderson, and it was like on short notice, and I'm on my way down to 205, and they told me he was coming, and he weighed like 211. I was like, please make the fight at 210. Like, don't make me cut this last 5 pounds, right? Like, then I know that's what Jones would feel as he comes down to 205 if that's where the fight takes place. So those last 5 pounds are the worst. So imagine if you don't have to cut those off. It'd be crazy.
Knowing Jones, though, right, it would almost be the most annoying thing Israel could do is go and get the 205-pound title and say, see, now it's my belt, and you gave it up, now I have it. Could you not think that would just entice Jones enough? Or do you really think the weight is the
I just think that at this point, when you've done what Jones has done over the course of his career, now you start to look for new challenges, right? It's easier to speak about these things because I was in the same situation, right? When I'm beating Volkan and all those guys, and I'm like, I'll go fight Stipe, right? It's something new. And I think at this point, Jones has finally wrapped his head around going up, right? Because for a long time, he teased it, but it was never truly like a real thing. And now that he's wrapped his mind around it, I don't know if he's going to want to like kind of divert that back to going to 205. It's a massive change for a guy that it took a long time to make up his mind, and now he has. So I don't know. I don't know if he's willing to go back down there.
Is there something for Izzy wanting to clean out middleweight first? He does want to be the greatest middleweight.
Yeah. That
already.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to. He's a big guy, but he doesn't seem to struggle to make the weight, right? He steps on the scale. He always looks pretty good. He doesn't look like he's dying when he steps out there. You've seen guys step on the scale. Max Holloway at 145. Like, you see guys looking like they're about to just fall over. Izzy doesn't look like that when he's making 185. So you can tell that he's a true middleweight. And there's honor in cleaning out the division before you start looking to new things, right? Because what about the guy that's next? What about the Jared Cannonier, who has done so many spectacular things to earn a title fight? All of a sudden, the champion's gone. That's not really good for the sustainability of a weight class. So Izzy wanting to stay there and fight is great for the division. But fans, which is what we are, we love the sport. We're fans of the sport. Fans want to see the next big thing. And the next big thing is Izzy versus Jones. And Jared Cannonier is a dangerous guy if he can get past Robert Whittaker, because I believe that it comes down to matchups, right? Robert Whittaker wins. Do you make Whittaker versus Adesanya 2 already? Or do you kind of start going, now it's time for the Jones fight? Cannonier is something fresh and something new. People can get excited about it.
And then looking at Jan's win against Dom's obviously coming off that 5-round fight against Jones. You think he got maybe a little overconfident? No, he just went 5 rounds with committing.
Man, everybody's ready to coronate that man. That's why you go in there. You can't. When you're going there for coronation, you're about to become the king. Plans don't always work. Honestly, plans don't always work. You think it's happened on so many occasions. And I've said this time and time again. I go, Dom was supposed to go there and get his belt. Because I was one of the people thinking that too. Like, it's Dominic Reyes' fight to win. He went 5 rounds with the man. And now he's fighting a guy that, we've seen lose. But you don't know that Jan Blachowicz is a new person today opposed to who he was back then. So I don't know if he got overconfident. I think that Jan Blachowicz just hit him, and he must hit really, really hard because when he's hitting these dudes, they just fall down. He about killed Luke Rocco with my boy. You know, I love my boy, my dear boy Luke. He almost killed Luke. When he hit Dominic Reyes, he beat somebody up before Dominic Reyes too. Oh, it was Corey Anderson. He almost killed Corey Anderson. And then when he hit Dominic Reyes and his eye just like exploded, or his nose, I was like, oh my goodness, he's in trouble. He got beat the whole time. And Jan, and I've said this, and this is probably, he gets mad, I go, he's kind of slow, right? Jan's is a bit slow. His hands move, his movements are slow. But maybe he's faster in there, right? And you think that he's moving slow on TV, but he was hitting Dominic, and he was moving forward the whole time. And once he hit him, boy, put him out. That Jan Blachowicz is something else, man. Do something else. Big, strong dude, too. Like, just big and strong. Just, you know, if you get hit by him, you're going to have bruises everywhere he hits you. Nasty.
Do you see anyone beating him moving forward? Do you think he hold on to that belt?
I mean, man, you guys are really going to make Jan Blachowicz get mad at me. Keep asking me questions about. I don't know. I think Glover Teixeira is a problem for him. I mean, the dude that Glover's fighting, Thiago Santos beat him. Right? Like, Thiago Santos beat him. So, like, how can you be confident in anything? Right? When you went into those title fights, right, you watch an Adesanya fight, you feel pretty confident that he's probably going to hold on to that belt. You go into a Jones fight, right? You see me in Rumble fight, or you see me in Vulcan, you're like, dude's probably going to keep his belt. But you don't know anymore. You know, these matchups are so. Khabib Nurmagomedov, it's very difficult to pick somebody to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov. That Piotr Jan. Like, is somebody really going to be Piotr Jan? I mean, Davison Figueiredo. Like, these dudes are like guys that when they go into those title fights, you're like, it's going to be very tough. Amanda Nunes. I mean, is somebody going to get the belt off him? No. But I think he's the guy that, with the way the division is and the way he matches up with him, because he doesn't wrestle, and when he gets taken down at times he struggled before that, but I'm not even judging him on those struggles from the past, because obviously he's a new person. You take Jan Blachowicz down today, he might just get right back up, you know. So it's like, you don't know. But because of those matchups, I don't know if I feel as confident in that title reign as I do in the guys like Adesanya, Usman, Nurmagomedov, Jan. Volkanovski's another guy that's going to have a tough time. Volkanovski can hold the belt for a long time, but he's got so many sharks in the water that it'll be difficult.
You were talking about Paulo Costa and Adesanya. I don't know if you got to if anybody asked you about the celebration.
Oh man,
I just want to hear your thoughts.
That was crazy, man. That was crazy. I mean, that was just crazy. Like, I mean, it was crazy. I've never seen anybody do anything like that. But Israel Adesanya is the same guy that in his UFC debut, you guys remember this on Fox? Izzy walks up to the pole and acts like he pulls himself out and pisses on the side of the octagon. He's like, this is my home now. This is my territory, right? Marking this spot. So it's like, I mean, you can't be surprised by anything Adesanya does anymore. That was crazy, man. That was crazy. But here's the thing, though. People make, like, comments about him, and they make these references about his personal life, and don't think that I'm implying anything, because I don't want this dude's mad at me, but it's like, then he plays into it, right? A lot of times when people say stuff about you, if you play into it, it makes them shut up. And I think Izzy did that to Paulo, but I mean, that's as disrespectful as it gets. Like, that's why I said, hey, leave him alone, man. Dude's dead. Like, dude's dead. Leave him alone. I mean, you can't do anything more to him. Like, leave him alone, bro. Like, come on, man. Leave this guy alone, man. And I like Paulo Costa, too. I felt bad for him. I felt really bad for him because he didn't deserve to get it like that. That was awful.
And also about Adesanya, he loves Anderson Silva. He talks about Anderson Silva a lot. And I've asked Dana that, but do you think he can be the next Anderson Silva of the division?
I think so. I mean, and also, you know, when I thought about the fight, when I watched him beat on Paulo Costa and I watched him beat on Robert Whittaker a year and a half ago, Anderson Silva fought him to a 29-28 decision at 43 years old. Like, so how special is Anderson Silva that he can go with this dude? And as you said, he loves Anderson. So maybe it was respect, right? Maybe he respected Anderson so much that he couldn't truly just let himself go. But yeah, I think he's gonna hold that belt for a long time, man, because I love Jared Cannonier. I think he's the man. But when I look at the style matchup, I'm like, what's he gonna do to Adesanya? Is he gonna be able to grab him, take him down? Is he gonna be able to knock him out? Like, what's he gonna do? I don't see I mean, I'm looking at thinking about the 85-pound weight division and Rob, and who's a fantastic guy and great champion. Yoel Romero, he's beating him, and Jared's going to be the next guy he might fight if he beats Rob. When you look at the contenders, it seems kind of tough to find a guy that can beat this dude. Also because he's only just starting. It's not like Adesanya's been there for 5 years, right? He's been fighting in the UFC for 2 years. That's insane.
And last one for me, about your social media. Of course, you're a very positive guy, and you like to interact with people. But your last tweet, you're kind of like getting into like a little argument with some people that were, talking.
Yeah.
Because of Khabib and how you.
They're so stupid. They're so stupid, right? Like, I thought you're Khabib's friend. Hey, because I'm Khabib's friend, doesn't mean that I can't say that Conor McGregor's a good fighter. Or does it take a freaking genius, right? Do I have to be does it take a genius to realize that if Conor McGregor wins 2 fights in a row, he's probably going to get a title fight? Like, come on, this is not rocket science. He beat Cowboy, and if he fights again and Khabib beats Justin Gaethje, they sold 2.5 million pay-per-views last time. They made a boatload of money. Why wouldn't I want that for my friend to fight a guy that he's beaten before, but also to see one? I was in the arena. I helped stop the fight. But because so many celebrities and people wanted tickets, I paid $10,000 for me and my family to watch Khabib fight. So if I'm paying $10,000 to go to Khabib's fight, then he is my friend, because I'm not paying $10,000 for anything, right? But I knew that was his moment, man. That was the biggest moment that he was going to experience. And I wanted to be there to support him as a teammate and as a friend. And then I went in there and stopped the fight, and Dana gave me all my money back. So it worked out, right? So I got to go to the fight for free because I was helping stop the fight. I actually got to go for free. But it's like he's one of my best friends. He's a great guy. He's loving. He's so loyal. He's so loving. But if he gets to fight a guy that he beat before and make another $20 million, I'm all for it. So these idiots on the internet are so stupid. It's like I don't understand if they're just trolling you, or if they believe some of the points that they make. It just does not make any sense. And I sit on my show on Mondays now and I talk about all these topics. And it's going to make some people happy. It's going to make some people mad. But the reality is, it's like First Take. People get mad at Max and Stephen A. every day. And the more that they get mad at me and Ariel, the better it is. Because that means that we're starting to hit our points are starting to hit home, and people are paying attention. And that's great. ESPN loves it.
Sorry, as one of his best friends and teammates, do you think he would listen to you and fight McGregor again?
I don't think he'll fight McGregor again. But I still know that if I'm working for the UFC, I'm trying to put that fight together. I tell you that much. If Conor can win again, I'm trying to put the fight together. And Khabib's just so rich now. It's like he don't need money. Khabib is so rich now, it's crazy. He's like, you can give me. He said they can give him the whole UFC and he ain't gonna do an Ultimate Fighter. $5 billion. And you know what's crazy? He means it. He's not selling. He's as genuine a person as you'll ever meet in the world. And if he says something, he usually means it. He's not number one bullshit guy. He tells you the truth. And I believe Khabib. But I would like him to fight Conor for sure.
You still have to avert your eyes when you look at him.
Me? No, I'm Daniel Cormier. I don't know. We do that to each other all the time. Remember, I was like, put your eyes down to me, Khabib. He goes, I'm champion too, brother. And I was like, no, I've got 2. That's when I had 2 belts. And he's like, okay. But no, he's a sweetheart, man. Like, to get to know Khabib is to be better. Like, the more you get to know him, you're a better person for it, because he is an absolute sweetheart. And to see, I sent him a video. There was a video floating around the other day of him fighting, was it Gleison Tibau when he was throwing all those weird punches? The one that he almost lost. What was the one he almost lost? And he was like kind of jump punching, and like I said, hey, Khabib, the next time someone tells you that you didn't get better by coming to AKA, look back at this in 2012 when you were just diving at people's legs and everything. He was like, okay, brother, I get it. He's a sweetheart, man. And I'm so excited to see him when they come into the bubble.
Let's talk about Khabib's next fight. How do you see the whole fight play now?
Yep.
Like, what are the strong sides for Justin? What are the strong sides for Khabib?
Toughest fight, I think it's the toughest fight in the division for him. I think Justin Gaethje is an absolute stud. He is, they call him the human highlight and the most exciting guy in the game, and it is true, but not just the game, in all of combat sports. There is no fighter in the world of sports that is more exciting than Justin Gaethje. Boxing, kickboxing, mixed martial arts, you'll find nobody more exciting and better. And the Justin Gaethje that fought Tony Ferguson in April or May is more dangerous to Khabib than anyone that he has ever stood across the octagon from. With that being said, I've seen Khabib Nurmagomedov train for championship fights and fights since 2012. The only person that was more thorough in their preparation was Cain Velasquez when he became the champion back in 2010. No one worked harder. No one was more committed. And I just don't know if anyone's going to beat him. I'm confident in believing that Khabib will retire undefeated. Nobody will beat this guy. He is too committed to who he's supposed to be to get beat by anyone. So Justin will fight a good fight. And I'm calling the fight, right? So I'm going to be as unbiased as I can possibly be in this fight. And I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability. But I just don't know if anybody can beat this guy right now. There's no 55-pounder should feel that strong when he grabs you.
And Khabib said exactly what he's going to do in this fight, just like he did
with everybody. He tells you, but it's like you got to be able to stop it. He's become so good at what he does that you have to be able to stop it. No, that's why Justin's the most dangerous, because Justin has the skill set to stop it. Let's see what happens.
Another fighter that people call Khabib 2.0, Khamzat Chimaev. What are your thoughts on this guy?
Let me tell you something. I'm high on this dude. That dude right there is something else. I couldn't believe what he did to Mearshart. Mearshart was terrified. Mearshart said all the right things during the week. I'm not afraid of this dude. And then the fight started. He looked like a deer in the headlights. He's backing up. Chimaev walks him down and just punches him upside the head. Mearshart falls down. Fight's over. What, 8 seconds? Wasn't it like 8 seconds? I mean, this was the craziest fight. And this dude now, everybody would say stuff like Khamzat Chimaev is better at striking than he is grappling. Like, no way. I've seen this guy outland people 175 strikes to 5 in 2 fights where he just took him down. And then against Gerald, this dude's a welterweight. And he's putting people to sleep like that. So, good luck with Khamzat Chimaev in 185 or 170. I talked about Usman and those guys having the ability to run the table for a while. If that kid keeps climbing the ranks, he's a real problem for everyone.
I don't know if you're aware of, but his teammate is fighting on the next card. Guram Kutateladze, remember this name?
Guram Kutat. I'm glad I don't have to say that. Yeah.
And he's fighting Mateusz Gambart.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to just call him Guram. So when you hear me saying Guram over and over on Saturday, just don't worry. Just know that I cannot pronounce his last name. I'll learn it at some point, though. Keep winning. I didn't know how to say Chimaev until he made me learn it. Huh?
You know how to say Nurmagomedov at some point, probably.
No, I knew how to say that. I got beat by enough Russians in wrestling to know how to say Nurmagomedov.
Darren Till said that he gave Khamzat shot the big boys through jab. How do you see that matchup going?
Darren Till's a bad boy. That if he goes and fights Darren Till, we're gonna know exactly where he stands, because Darren Till's a bad boy, and also one of the funniest guys on the internet that I've ever seen. Like, somebody take Darren Till's phone, man, because he's very disrespectful. Him and Adesanya need to be on timeout with their phones because they're out of control.
I think that's it.
All right. Hey guys, thank you. That was fun.
Appreciate it.
I'm just glad I ain't got to talk about my fights no more.
Yeah, it's a lot easier, huh?
Huh?
Still have to talk about John Jones.
Yeah, that won't end. Is Ortega in there already? Okay, all right. Is Ortega in there?
How are you? Me again.
You again.
I can't get rid of it. I think I probably answered all your questions, haven't I?
Yeah. Well, instead of looking forward this time, I wanted to look back and talk about this past weekend with the Buckley call, right? I mean, obviously, everybody's debating, is this the greatest highlight, the greatest knockout we've ever seen? I know you liked it going in there. You've had a couple days to reflect on it. Is that the best knockout we've ever seen?
It's certainly up there. The thing I struggle with is picking knockouts apart between the ones that were planned before they got in the octagon and the ones that were circumstantial when they were in there. I broke it down on the aftermath on the YouTube channel. Twice in the first round, the kick was caught, and Buckley acknowledged it, but wasn't able to return with it. The second round, when he came out and Kasang and I got a better grip on the ankle, that was when he made the adjustment, and it was just a beautiful knockout. Obviously, the one that people keep firing out there is Masvidal against Askren, and that, for me, the best thing about that is that he knew exactly what he was doing when he got in there. Same with McGregor and Aldo. That was a planned setup to finish, and when they are able to do it so quickly, that's very, very special. That requires someone to research, to understand what their opponent's going to do, to work on a predictability, and then to make it happen in the fight, which is the most difficult thing to do, especially at that high level. Main event as well for both of those. So it's difficult to overcome those two for me. Certainly for 2020, that is the knockout of the year. And you know, it wasn't. I mean, I saw a couple of people going, "Oh, well, you know, maybe a lucky shot or whatever." It's ridiculous. You know, you don't throw that kick without meaning to land it. And it's also something that's very difficult to train, because you can't fire it full power. You don't want to throw it in training because the likelihood is someone's going to get hurt. And it's just a beautiful technique, isn't it? You know, I think we've got 4 back kick knockouts to the head in total in the UFC, and to have one when he was mid-air after his foot getting caught, spectacular.
I was going to ask you, like, as much as you love studying the game, I mean, you just said right away that's traditional Taekwondo, right? It's like old school, thousands of years technique or whatever, but we've never seen it in a, you know, displayed in a fashion like that, right? So
yeah.
What does that do for just like kind of the martial arts nerd inside of you to see like new techniques that are really just, you know, old techniques but being, you know, revitalized, I guess?
It's amazing. And what's unfortunate is we got another beautiful finish in the main event from another traditional Taekwondo technique that is being slightly overlooked given the fact that Buckley's knockout was so emphatic. Yeah, I mean, the Raptors will tell you my library at home is ridiculous. I've got about 2,000 books, and I've got everything from Taekwondo to Hapkido to just bought a Wing Chun dummy. There's definitely a lot of stuff from the traditional martial arts that's applicable, and we're going through this constant filtration process with MMA. You know, we started off, people were coming in with individual styles, and we'll see what works here and there. Then we get the ground and pound guys coming in that have understood how to reverse engineer jiu-jitsu, using their wrestling to stay on top and nullify the ground game and beat people up. Then we saw the sprawl and brawl guys. You know, it's like there's this constant evolution going on. And the stage that we're at now is MMA has largely become a foundational art in itself. You know, it's made up of, you know, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Muay Thai is really the foundation. But then every now and then we'll get a purist that will come in and they'll throw a sprinkling of something else in. You know, Ronda coming in as a judoka, Kara Parisian back in the day as a judoka. There's a lot of benefit in the traditional martial arts. The difficulty is sorting through it and seeing what's applicable and what's not. And you know, as a 17-year Taekwondo practitioner, there's so much about Taekwondo that is applicable, and it's somewhat been harmed by it becoming an Olympic sport because it's become a bit of a game of tag. Like back in the day, I was fighting full contact, and the point was to upset your opponent's balance with the shot. Like, you had to land with power. And I remember the back kick being one of my favorite techniques. And to apply it in MMA is very difficult because the danger of missing it, you give you back. You know, you find yourself in all kinds of bad positions. So there are high risk movements that still do pay dividends. And we've got so many fighters coming from all around the world with different styles. I mean, we've got Wushu Sanda fighters coming into the UFC now as well. We're going to continue to watch the game evolve, and I think now we've got a foundation martial art. The new kids coming through are starting with MMA, then they'll start going back into the history books and finding those specialisms that, as Bruce Lee said, you know, you absorb what's useful, you reject what's useless, and you add what is what's the word? I can't remember exactly, but it's basically you add what is your own. You know, you add your own personal sprinkling onto it. And now we've got that foundation of MMA. We're getting confidence from these guys to try all different kinds of things. I love it, man. I love it. And I always try and daydream where the sport's going to be in 5 or 10 years. We're going to see a lot more traditional martial arts coming through.
There you go. Let's talk about this weekend's main event. Obviously, everybody's excited about it. For you, what's the key to this fight? Like, where is the most important, you know, area of engagement that we need to watch out for?
Well, ultimately, it's down to Brian Ortega to decide where he wants the fight to take place. What we know of Korean Zombie from back in the day, you go back to the Leonard Garcia fight in WEC, and that was an absolute war. But when he made his UFC debut, won by Twister. So we got two sides of the same coin of Korean Zombie. He can trade punches and get wild, but he can also submit you with a highly technical submission. the streak that he went on after that, knocking out Mark Hominick in 6 seconds, getting in there against Aldo, and giving a good account of himself, I think it set him up for a good time away to reflect on where he's at and you know, who he was as a fighter while the division was developing around him. When he returned to the UFC, he was a different individual. And what I like about the Korean Zombie, much like Justin Gaethje and the evolution that we've seen in him recently, he doesn't need to take punches. He's not there to be hit anymore. You watch the Moicano fight and he stands waiting, and it's one of the most beautiful knockouts I've ever seen, purely because he never takes his eyes off Moicano's chin. He waits for the shot to come. As the punch comes out, he slips and he watches his chin as he comes over and hits him with that laser focused right hand. The mentality of not caring about your own well-being and, you know, the damage you take to your face puts you in a very strong position to slip your head off the center line and punish people for missing. We've seen that with just Gaethje recently. Korean Zombie turned that corner when he came out of the military and rejoined the UFC. So it's all about him standing his ground, Ortega to come to him. And what I like Ortega as well, this loss, he will have definitely have learned from that. We know he's got good boxing skills. We know he's got great ground skills as well. Zombie's a bit of an enigma on the ground. We don't know much about him on the ground, so I wouldn't mind seeing it hit the mat for a scramble. But in the striking ranges, it's Ortega drifting in and out of range and peppering him with boxing, while Zombie waits to knock him out with that one clean punch. They're very, very different strikers, very, very different approach to the game, but both highly skilled and highly technical. And I always get excited to see an undefeated fighter pick up a first loss and see what they change about their game, because we always see jumps in their game, evolutions, and Brian Ortega is the kind of guy that doesn't need to pick up second loss like Justin Gaethje did. A little bit hard-headed of him to go back into the next fight with the same style. I'm excited to see the developments in his game, and Korean Zombie's a legend. You know, he was a legend before he even signed his UFC contract because of that Leonard Garcia fight. So it'll be an honor to call that one.
Brian Ortega obviously has the traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu style, but Korean Zombie, like you said, just pull off twisters and all kinds of. Do you view this as sort of a 10th Planet versus Gracie Jiu-Jitsu style matchup?
It's definitely orthodox against unorthodox. Absolutely. What I like about Brian Ortega's style is obviously we know him as T-City, and he has got excellent submissions off his back, but it's his grip adjustments when he's on a guillotine. And the majority of the time he finds himself on a guillotine because people don't want to deal with his striking anymore. So, I mean, I always say that the guillotine is the striker's submission. I've only got one submission on my record, and that's because the guy didn't want to kickbox with me anymore. You know, people run into guillotines when they... Exactly. Good example. But see, Brian Ortega's got a well-rounded ground game that he doesn't feel the need to use in every one of his fights. It's there in his back pocket if he needs it. But we also know that he can get fights stopped with strikes. What with Frankie Edgar, obviously the Clay Guida one stands out in my mind. Brian Ortega, he's a third-round fighter. You know, he gets better as the fight goes on, but over 3 rounds, it puts a lot of pressure on him to get the finish in the 3rd round. Against Max Holloway, it felt like he started faster when he didn't need to, and Max Holloway builds as the fight goes on. So I was expecting the first couple of rounds to be quite cautious, and then the 3rd, 4th, and 5th to be pretty wild. I'm expecting that Brian Ortega this time around. I think he's going to be respectful of Zombie, of his punching power. I also think the enigma of Zombie's ground game is something to be wary of as well, and I think Ortega knows that. So I think we're going to get a striking extravaganza to start with, and if it hits the ground, it'll be because one's getting the better of the other. But as you said, with the twister, there's a difference between the twister and the go-go platter, for example, and a bunch of other submissions. Because if you're setting up a twister, your opponent knows what you're doing, like all the way through. There's like 4 or 5 different control points that you have to finish a twister. So for someone like Brian Ortega, he's going to look at that and think he's going to be able to read the ground game of Korean Zombie as it's coming. But because we just don't really know a great deal about it, and what we've seen in Zombie's last couple of fights is, you know, he knocks people down, then he takes their back and beats them up for a while. That's what I prefer to see in an MMA fighter, because submissions open up with strikes much, much quicker. And Brian Ortega liking to fight off his back might not be a good thing against Zombie, because Zombie hanging out his guard ready to get triangled. He's going to be raining down punches and elbows.
Then unrelated to the fight, you had mentioned like that spinning back kick that Buckley hit. It's hard to train or practice because it could do so much damage. So when would someone practice that in camp?
Well, I actually used to drill that technique quite a lot, and I used to use it in Taekwondo. Oftentimes, because I was fighting guys that were taller and faster than me, so I would use the hop side kick to stop them in their tracks and then fire the back kick off it. The difference with the one that Buckley threw is that it required the leg being caught. I mean, most of the time when you drill that technique, you decide you're throwing the back kick before you throw the hop side kick to set it up. So as the kick had been caught the first couple of rounds, the first round a couple of times, there just wasn't the purchase on the ankle for Buckley to do anything. The second time the kick was caught, you could kind of see him lose his balance and start to run backwards, in which case Kasanga and I tried to run him down. And the adjustment that he made in that moment to hop and spin his foot to face the opposite way before he fired the back kick, it requires you to be very present and in the moment. And I mean, it's very difficult to find that place. I very rarely found that place when I was fighting. It was very frustrating. That's why I talk about being full reptile. You're in that moment. You're present, and you've not got all these different narratives in your head that you could throw out there. I mean, maybe that was just top of the pile because his leg had been caught a couple of times. But it is such a difficult technique to practice, especially to the face. I mean, I used to predominantly aim for the body pad with the back kick to hit the solar plexus, and the head is such a smaller target, and the risk of throwing it and missing puts you in a real precarious position.
Now, if you're Buckley's coach, are you now trying to rein him back to say, just don't try to do this for the sake of it? Like I think you saw with Dong Young Kim kept trying to throw spinning back stuff against Tyron after he knocked out Hathaway. If you're his coach, just be like, don't just go out there and start doing this all the time for no reason.
Yeah, that is a challenge. Fighters always want to be a better version of themselves coming back in there. And, he's set the bar so high for himself when it comes to knockouts that, he might be chasing that spectacular finish. He might be in the Taekwondo books right now trying to dig out his next, 360 turning kick to the head or whatever. The thing is with Buckley, 10 fights, he's got 7 knockouts on his record before going into this fight. His hands are really what does the job. He's a power puncher. And I think that, a good coach will look at his game and just try and refine the basics, because he was quite reckless in that early going. He landed a beautiful uppercut that damaged Kasanganai's eye very, very quickly. But the recklessness to his style is what's going to cost him when he gets higher up in the sport. And that's what we saw against Kevin Holland. For all the spectacular knockouts you can get, you need that foundational base to land on if it doesn't work out. And I think that's what the coaches will work on. That little bit of extra sprinkling of creativity is a wonderful thing. And you don't really need to teach a fighter that. Give them the tools to play with it. But at the same time, just kind of let them be themselves. And he's a talent, absolutely. All good? Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, we've got to speak to the zombie. Give a shout out.